It's just amazing. You connect with these people, and then what happened to your career from there is just like you got to be looking back on that and just going, wow.
It was really like a hurricane of activity when you look back at it. But it wasn't like it happened overnight. I paid a lot of dues when I was a young boy,
Yeah.
playing in, we called it the Mud Tour in the Midwest, where we would play every dive and where you could play. But in those days, that's what you had to do. And I would run into everybody that's now a superstar or a huge band that was at that time unsigned, i.e. Cheap Trick, Styx, all of those guys from the Midwest, REO Speedwagon. We'd be playing the same little clubs in the Midwest, vying for attention. And that's when rock and roll was very cool. And you had agents and people from huge record labels coming to the Midwest, find talent, or bands going to LA, and then Cheap Trick hit, and signed. And then that was it. There was like a frenzy. They started looking at bands, and then Styx, I think, and then, the rest of everybody started to take off. And I was just not happy because Mercury Records had came out. I had been very close to getting record deals at early ages, maybe 16, 17 years old, with Mercury and Capitol. And the guys were on the verge of signing me when I was very young. And then the labels would make changes, Eddie, and then I'd be back to square one, and that guy would be gone. And a lot of guys helped me during that early period. J.J. Jackson from MTV was one of my biggest fans. He was one of the first DJs of color on MTV, if you remember, in the 80s. J.J. Jackson, man.
Remember him well.
He pioneered me in the rock world of, you got to hear this guy, Micki Free, and to all of his friends and stuff in LA when I first got out there. He was a fantastic guy, and he just thought, he was like, you're like Phil Lynott of Thin Lizzy, man, and Hendrix, and he was comparing me to all those guys of color, because I was not the regular rock guy.
Yeah.
And most of the record companies looked at me that way, Eddie, too. Like, this guy's like Brown, man. How can he be playing rock and roll, blues rock like this? I remember a lot of times they'd have my music and they would meet with me at Geffen Records, at John Kalogner even, and all these people, and go, you're the guy that wrote these songs? You're the guy that's playing and singing? I go, yeah, that's me on there. That was early on. And they just couldn't believe it.
Yeah, I can see you responding to them asking if you're the guy with a big smile on your face. Yep, that is me. You want me to plug in the guitar and prove it?
Totally. And it was like that. And they were just shocked, to tell you the truth, because that was pre-Prince even. These were the early days. Prince was doing the same thing on the other side of the pond in Minnesota, but he was doing funk rock. But I was doing straight up rock, blues rock, pop. One of my biggest influence in the day was Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers, dude. I mean, it was just unbelievable for me, and then to go down the road and to actually meet Tom and to have Steve Ferroni, his drummer for 25 years, play in my band, American Horse Trio, when Cindy Blackman couldn't play with me because she was on tour with Santana. Dude, it just goes on and on. It's just like crazy. Gene Simmons told me a long time ago, Eddie, I should write a book. I mean, this was probably 20 years ago. And I was like, who would want to read a book about me and my boring BS that I've been through? And Gene said to me, you'd be surprised. I'll never forget. That's what he said. That was a long time ago.
Well, he led you towards Shalimar in that direction and gave you support for that. So maybe this book deal, especially, I would like to say that listening to the episodes of Micki's Free Ride, which is every Saturday night, 7 to 10 right here, I think that a book could be something you have a lot of stories to tell, man.
I've considered it. I got to be honest with you, Eddie. And someday I might do it, someday very soon, too. Kind of like the way that Joe Perry, another good friend of mine from Aerosmith, and Steven Tyler did their books. So they're not like real boring. So it's an easy read with cool pictures and gets to the point of what happened, how I got there, who I am. And like Keith Richards' book, man, just basic coolness without all the filler of boring stuff.
Listen, I look at it this way for what you've accomplished is, first off, I look at it as an admirable dedication to your art. I mean, this is something that, like you said, going back to Germany and seeing Jimi Hendrix and saying, man, I want to do
Yeah.
that. And I mean, I'm sure that there has been times on the road, because it's got to be a rough, huge road that you were on to perfecting what you did and doing what you wanted to do. You probably thought, man, I could do something that's a little easier than this, but you just stuck with it because it seems like you just had such a passion for it. You were not going to let anybody or anything get in
Right.
your way, right?
You're totally right. I mean, it from the time I saw Hendrix to now, I never wanted to be anything but a musician. It sounds crazy, but that's all I ever wanted to be. The funny story is, for a little while, I was like a model. I don't know if you know that, but I was like a male model for, I don't know, a year or two, because of my older sister who was a model. But
Oh, okay.
that didn't, I was like, forget that, man. That's like a joke. I didn't want to do that. I always wanted to be a musician, and I designed my world around that. Even when I was a young boy, which is eons ago, going to school, I wanted to quit high school and just be a musician. But even in that early stage in the game, I knew that I had to get a high school diploma. I knew that. And shortly thereafter, I met Gene Simmons, and he told me, you have to finish high school and you have to get a diploma, because rock and roll is not forever. He used to say that to me, and you have to have something to fall back on. I didn't even know what he meant. I didn't even know what he meant, because I just wanted to rock and roll. I remember, Eddie, this is a great story. I met Todd Rundgren when I was very, very young, trying to get into the business, and in Chicago, outside of Chicago somewhere. And I got my chance to talk to him. It was right after he did the Midnight Special, and Hello, It's Me was out, which was one of my all-time favorite songs. And I said, do you have any words of wisdom for a guy like me that wants to be like you someday, like a rock star? He looks at me, Eddie, and I'll never forget what he said. He goes, yeah, don't quit your day gig. Now, that's what Todd Rundgren said to me. I didn't even know what he was talking about. I'm like, what's a gig? What's a day gig? I didn't even know what he meant.
Uh-huh.
And then as life started to progress through the music business, and it was tough. It was very, very tough for Cream to rise to the top, we could say.
Mm-hmm.
I knew that he meant, if you have something else that you can do, always have it in your bag of tricks, because you're going to need it someday. That's what Todd meant by that. And, he's right. And to this day, besides, being a musician, I've worked with Hard Rock and as their director of entertainment, and all music based, but still doing what I do, opening Hard Rock cafes for them worldwide, all over the world. And thus me playing in London at Hyde Park, meeting Bill Wyman from the Stones, becoming friends with Bill, and it goes on and on and on that way.
Incredible. What
That's
a
crazy.
story. Yeah, I totally wholeheartedly agree with that, and it although it was a rough road for you and you knew what you were going to do, you always had what Todd Rundgren said, those
Right.
day gigs, where you had something to fall back
Yeah.
on. So you had that financial backing to buy more
Yeah,
guitars,
right.
and keep rocking, right?
Right. Oh, yeah, man.